Welcome to this edition of the South Shore Press Newscast. I'm your news director, Stefan Mihailu. There does not seem to be a lot of love lost between President Biden and Kamala Harris.
Right.
Kamala Harris hosted a big rally in Michigan.
We need to lower the cost of living.
And at the same time, President Biden walked into the White House briefing room and offered an update on the hurricane.
And we're going to have to deal with unforeseen cost of what this hurricane is going to cost.
Kamala Harris went on The View.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
And lo and behold, Joe Biden holds an impromptu hurricane briefing in the White House.
The people desperately want hope. Tell me it's going to be okay. Tell me it's going to be okay.
Maybe Joe Biden does not want 4 more years after all.
We can't have 4 more years of this.
And someone clearly needs to remind Bill Clinton that he's campaigning for Kamala Harris and not Donald Trump.
And on the immigration thing,
the former president basically blamed Harris's wide open border policies for the death of Laken Riley.
You had a case in Georgia not very long ago, didn't you? They made an ad about a young woman who'd been killed by an immigrant. Yeah, well, if they'd all been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened. But if they're all properly vetted and that doesn't happen.
Harris is also having a pretty rough week, basically getting busted for plagiarizing her book.
Kamala Harris apparently copied some significant chunks of her book from Wikipedia. So if you want a president with their own ideas, vote for Donald Trump. If you want a president who copies her own ideas from Wikipedia, vote for Kamala Harris.
Joining us now for his take on these presidential shenanigans is former Congressman George Santos. George, as always, good to see you.
Steph, it's always good to be with you. Let's talk about presidential shenanigans this morning, right? Like, what is going on? It is October, and we have no shortage of, October surprises, right?
Yeah, it can't be an accident that President Biden is timing major press conferences at the same exact time that Kamala Harris has big announcements. It can't be an accident.
The saying goes, hell have no fury on a woman scorned. Well, hell have no fury on a geriatric president scorned. Look, here's the reality. I think what we're dealing with here is almost a back to default settings Joe Biden. Somebody who, if you recall in his earlier years, yes, a gaffe machine, but somebody who actually focused on aggressive policy. Remember the super predators comment? Look, not that I say I condone that, but this is somebody who's going back to his default settings almost in midst of a geriatric cognitive decline. And he's saying, like, you know what? She screwed me. And this is kind of reminiscent of what we hear about the Biden operation, right? Everybody likes to talk about the Clinton machine, the Obama machine. Those are very sophisticated operations. I mean, look at the Clinton machine. It's endured, the 90s, the early 2000s, the 2010s, it's the 2020s now. So it's like it spans 4 decades of a sophisticated, fine-tuned machine. Similarly for the Obama, although much of a newer machine. But the Biden machine, although old, it's always been kind of like that scrappy, put it together with clay and just run with it operation. It's not very sophisticated. And I think that's what they're seeing is like, you want to come for the Biden machine with all this sophistication, but you forget that they're kicking ankles and cutting your tendons. That's really what's happening right here for all of us to watch. And I kind of hate to say this stuff, but I love to see it.
Speaking of Biden, I want to stick with him because, George, do you think it's some semblance or a case of, you know what, lady, screw you. I beat Donald Trump. You're not going to, and I'm going to show you that's going to be my legacy. I won, you lost.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think this is an eye for an eye now. You forced me out. Let me make it very clear. I was the only guy who could beat Donald Trump, and you took the only guy who could win out. Although we can all argue for the sakes of that debate performance back this summer that wasn't really clearly possible. But he's going to have the legacy of the guy who beat him, and it's looking increasingly more jarring and more obvious that she's going to hold the one of that she couldn't beat Donald Trump, which is quite frank. I mean, I love Trump and I'm biased when it comes to this, but I'm trying to be fair here. But I wouldn't want to hold that legacy if I were Kamala Harris.
Well, it looks like that's going to happen too. And hey, speaking of geriatric presidents, I mean, God bless him. But Bill Clinton, he just looked horrible. I mean, he's being mistaken for Joe Biden in public, and he basically blamed, the loss of American life at the border on Kamala Harris. So it sure sounds like someone's got to remind him, hey, Mr. President, you're campaigning for Kamala and not President Trump.
The thing with Bill Clinton is, I don't think Monica Lewinsky would approve too much of that endorsement for Trump, but I'm just trying to be serious here. Look, it sucks. Imagine being Bill Clinton after essentially being considered what one would consider back in the day a sex symbol, right? Like this very good-looking man, which every woman would fawn. I mean, hell, my mother, I grew up with her saying, "Oh, President Clinton," and to see that he walks into a McDonald's and you get this, person looking at him and saying, "Are you Joe?" No, I'm Bill Clinton. I don't know that. When was the last time Bill Clinton had to tell somebody, "I'm Bill Clinton," right?
I would go straight to the garage and start the car.
Pretty much. I mean, I just turn around, like, you know what? I don't want that cheeseburger anymore. I'm just going to leave. A U.S. president having to self-identify him in today's day and age, it's pretty sad. I mean, look, I feel bad for Bill in many ways. But when you live with Hillary Clinton, I think that's actually not the worst that can happen to you. It's actually refreshing.
God bless America. But I think all of us Republicans were shocked, though, at his actual comments of saying, yeah, Americans would be alive if it weren't for this vetting process at the border. Were you just thinking like, whoa, did he really just verbalize what he was thinking?
Bill is absolutely no longer a soundbite machine, or at least fine-tuned one, as he once was. And I think he tried to elongate and create bases for, I guess, he was trying to set up the conversation in a way, but he gave us all the sound bites we needed on the right. And I think he did himself in. And here's a reality. It's so over for VP Harris when you see President Clinton going out there and just completely, and I love saying President Bill Clinton because Hillary never made it, but it's so great to see President Bill Clinton going out there and stumping and making the argument to why we need to elect President Donald Trump to be the 47th president of the United States. It's just, you can call it a senior moment, you can call it for what it is, but you know what? It's the truth. Laken Riley would be alive today, and so many others, if it wasn't for Kamala Harris's borders are duties, or dereliction thereof, at southern border alongside Alejandro Mayorkas, which she calls a very good friend. So there you have it.
At the end of the day, if I were the Trump campaign, I would just literally run that 30-second clip, and at the very end of it say, I'm Donald Trump and I approve this message. That's like a campaign commercial that writes itself.
I mean, yes, but like I said, I don't know that women out in this country would appreciate an endorsement or a messaging support from Bill Clinton these days and age. So just putting that out there too.
Last question for you. JD Vance, just a blistering response on the fact that Kamala Harris basically got busted plagiarizing massive sections of her book from Wikipedia, things of that nature. I'm just curious, from your perspective, any thoughts on that? About the fact that, the ghostwriter is not suicidal and they're running away from Hillary Clinton. Other than that, any other thoughts?
Well, look, I'll give you this. JD Vance has been such a godsend for this ticket. I was actually skeptical to begin with, and I remember having those phone calls. Probably we had that phone call. I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this guy. He's a junior senator. You know what? Thank you, JD Vance, for proving me wrong. Look, simply put, Kamala Harris, yeah, we all know we hire ghostwriters, but it's very similar. And I'm going to kind of dig a little bit on our side. It's very similar to when that speechwriter gave Melania Trump the Michelle Obama speech, and nobody thought to do a revision of it or read it. I'm like, wait, this sounds awfully familiar. It's not like it was any speech. It was the DNC accepted speech for Michelle, right? So, and Trump lightheartedly went ahead at the Al Smith dinner in 2016 and made light of it. Now, Kamala Harris is going to double down and blame everyone but herself for not even doing an actual read of her own book and asking these tough questions. So if you can't have the time to be bothered to read your own book that you did hire a ghostwriter, much like I have a ghostwriter, and most people writing books these days have ghostwriters. We are not Thomas Jefferson. We are not sitting down and writing our own books at this point. But I am reading currently, actually, the rough draft of my own book. And I'm asking questions. I have sticky posts and everything galore and annotations to make sure where the sourcing of a lot of it is coming from. Because yes, it's a lot of it is my point of view, but they have to fill it, right? The fact that Kamala Harris wants to be president of the United States when she couldn't even do the simple task of a personal firsthand read of her own book should tell you everything you need to know about the person who's seeking the highest office in the nation, who is Kamala Harris. I don't think the vice president is ready, and I'm going to pull a Don Lemon quote. I think she is not ready for prime time. Quite frankly, I think prime is nothing anywhere near the Harris Walsh ticket at this point in time.
No, from your lips to God's ears. George, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, all of these video exchanges, we're going to do a lot of little newscasts for the South Shore Press, can be found at southshorepress.com and on the Twitter machine. Follow us at SSP Newsroom. George, as always, good to spend time with you.
Thank you so much, Steph. And don't forget, folks, southshorepress.com. That's where you get the real takes.